That's Debatable is sponsored by MB&G. MB&G is specialists in the esoteric world of vehicle and furniture warranty insurance, delivering quite marvellous customer service, prompt claims payment, and a highly developed understanding of how to deliver these products in a way that is both compliant with the regulations and attractive to customers. To find out more, call Paul Smith, the Managing Director, on 07887 501 441. That's 07887 501 441. Hello and welcome to That's Debatable, the weekly news podcast of the Free Speech Union. And welcome back to all of our listeners. Welcome back to all of our viewers as well. We're very, very excited today to have with us Bernie Spofforth, who will be known, I think, to quite a few people tuning in today. Bernie hit the headlines 2 months ago. We're already in October. So it was in August because she got arrested. But we're going to let Bernie talk us through exactly what happened. But we're absolutely delighted to have you, Bernie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to kick off just by saying what happened? I mean, your story has been all over the press. And how you use social media. This was during the riots, or just at the beginning of the riots back in August. You had the police not only knock on your door, but actually come with handcuffs and take you away. But in your own words, Bernie, what exactly happened back in August?
I had seen the news that day, but I'd been outside and I came in. I again saw the news on the television and I took my mobile phone and I just scrolled for Southport. So that was what I put in the search bar. And I saw a clip of a man whose daughter had been in the class or had relatives who'd been in the class, and it was from LinkedIn. And so I just screenshot it. And then I scrolled again, and the very next, or very close to that, I saw the name that the person had been on the watch list and under the health of Liverpool Mental Health Services. And I copied and pasted it, and then I put it on a new post saying, if this is true, there will be hell to pay. Now, that came very quickly after we'd had the soldier murdered, and that was a mental health issue. And then we'd had a little girl murdered a year ago with her throat slit. That was a mental health issue. And then we'd had people murdered in a park in London, and that was a mental health issue. And to me, it was, if your government cannot keep you safe from mental health problems in this country, then it is absolutely the government's fault. So like all of my posts, it was political. And then I went outside again and I didn't think anything of it. But I came back an hour, 2 hours, I don't know, but it was before I'd fed the dog. So I kind of know it was only a couple of hours. And I deleted it. I just deleted it. I saw it had got quite a lot of retweets and I thought, I don't even know really, I've said, is that true? But I don't know. So I just deleted it and I thought no more of it. And then the following morning, somebody he called himself a misinformation expert, and he is very active in the anti-racism type arena. And he had tried to put out that this had been a racist post, and that I had made it up, and I was the first person for it ever to have been seen on X. And that meant it went wild with hundreds and hundreds of people just tagging in the police and trying to have me arrested.
Wow. And how did you feel at that point when you saw it going viral for all the wrong reasons at that point? Did you take any additional action, or were the police round your door sooner rather than later,
No.
Bernie?
Normally when I post things, normally when I post things, I have sourced the information, I've checked the information. Now, it might be an opinion that I've had based on the information I've sought, but I have at least sourced the information. And so I was really upset with myself that I hadn't done that. But when I saw it all kicking off, I was a little bit confused, because then I started being blamed for the riots. And I just thought, this is ridiculous, but you can't defend yourself without information, without proper information. So very luckily, two data experts, one in Australia, one in the UK, worked tirelessly. I mean, for probably 48 hours. I know one of them just did not sleep, trying to find the source of that name and that sentence, because I knew I'd copied and pasted a sentence. By this point, the press were everywhere. They were calling, they wanted interviews. Channel 4 had put me on television. They'd said who I was. I'd been doxxed. My name wasn't on X. They decided to out me. And it was absolutely horrifying, because your whole life flashes before your eyes, right? I never thought the police would be involved, but I'm a businesswoman. And the worst thing that can ever happen to you is that your reputation is completely taken apart. So what you've built over 30 years is gone in an instant. And that really upset me, and it really worried me. And as I say, about 48 hours later, these two data guys had pulled together a huge amount of evidence, some of which I put on X to counteract what had been said in my own thread. But it wasn't good enough, because, of course, the press don't want good news stories. They don't want to be found out that they could possibly have been wrong. No, they just want what they had, right? The hysteria. So probably a day after that, then the police turned up. And they literally did turn up with 5 of them, 3 cars, and a police van, search me and take me from my house. Even though I had all the evidence for them, I was happy for them to take my devices, gave it to them. And then they took me to the police station. I have never been to a police station in my life, right, ever. I'm the kind of person that checks if I'm wearing a seatbelt when I'm walking down the street, if I see a policeman, right? So it was a completely alien experience. And you think you're going to be really brave in these situations, and I want to tell everybody, you're not brave, because everything is crumbling all around you. So you've been in the press. As far as you're concerned, everybody thinks you're this lunatic who's done something absolutely terrible. No one's listening to your defense. And then you're put into a concrete cell. And I've seen people say, no, you weren't. Yes, I was. And it was all concrete. And it had a concrete shelf on it with a little thin dark blue gym mattress and like this tablecloth thing for a blanket, a metal toilet full of cameras, and the window was block glass. So you couldn't see out. You only knew if it was daytime or nighttime. I had no watch. There were no clocks. And I was just this person whose life had utterly collapsed.
In just 48 hours, essentially, Bernie, or
Yeah.
even less than that.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days, my life had entirely collapsed. And for the
Did the
next,
police say
I
why
got...
you were being arrested, Bernie? Did they explain why you were? They must have said when they arrest you. They said
I
under
did.
section da da da. Yeah.
No, on suspicion, I can't even remember. I honestly can't remember. On suspicion of sending racial or false communications with the intent to do harm. which was ridiculous. I mean, ludicrous. If they'd even spent 10 minutes going through my posts, they would have seen that that's not the kind of person I am. That's not the kind of thing I do. And I knew when they had my devices that there was nothing. There were no groups I belonged to. I never sent private chats telling anybody anything. That's not who I am. So I thought it should be okay. I think I'll be fine, because as soon as they find this information out, they'll know they've made a mistake and they'll let me go. That was at about 4:00. And then every half an hour, they undid the latch on the cell and made me sit up. Can you tell us you're okay? Sit up, sit up. So I would sit up. Now that went on for many hours, because I didn't see my lawyer until 3:30 the following morning. So, I mean, not that I could have slept anyway, but there was no peace at all, at all. And I saw my lawyer, and the police said, this is going to the CPS at 7:00 in the morning. You'll be taken straight to magistrates, and then you'll be held on remand until your trial. Now, I didn't know what was happening outside. I didn't know that these trials were being fast-tracked. I just thought remand meant you might sit in a prison cell for, I don't know, months.
Until the
So
trial
I was
comes
terrified.
up. Yeah, exactly.
Until the trial comes up. Yeah, so I was terrified. And, there are practical things that, again, people won't know. I wear contact lenses, but they're only daily contact lenses. And I'd had them in for 2.5 days by that point. So I couldn't see. I hadn't had a change of underwear, I hadn't cleaned my teeth, I hadn't washed my face. There were no facilities. They told me I could have a shower. And when I thought, well, maybe it would be a good idea if I could maybe just splash my face with water, and I asked them, they were on a shift change, so no one could take me. Now, I'm not saying the police weren't nice to me, because they were very professional, and no one was unkind to me. But they must have seen that I was completely terrified and frankly, not in a good place. But I couldn't even splash my face with water. So they put me back in the cell at, I don't know, 4:30 in the morning, something like that. And I thought I had 3 hours. Now, don't forget, there's no clock, and I've got no watch. I've got no idea what time it is. And then they stopped checking me every half an hour. So now I have no idea. Eventually, the thing comes down. No, actually, the door opened, and they said, can you stand up and come with us? I now think I'm going to court. And it turns out it's 3:30 in the afternoon, and they're going to keep me for another 12 hours. So, and I said, but you must have seen my devices by now. They just wouldn't answer anything. So I got put back in the cell, and then at 4:00 in the morning, they came and got me, or 3:30 in the morning, they came to get me, and they said, we're going to release you on bail. These are your bail conditions, and the extra bail condition is you are not allowed to engage in social media at all. But they couldn't define what social media was. So did that mean WhatsApp? Did it mean LinkedIn? Did it mean texting? Lots of people have groups of texts. Does it mean I can go on Facebook Messenger and contact my family? No, it means nothing. And then they dropped me off at home. My bail was for the 19th, and then they extended it until the 5th. And then my
And you
lawyer
hadn't
just
seen
got
a
a phone
lawyer
call
yet,
saying,
Bernie, is that right? You hadn't seen a
yeah,
lawyer, or...
Yeah, I had. They'd taken me out of the cell to see my lawyer at 3:30 in the morning, and my lawyer had my husband and some good friends had got a great lawyer, and he turned up from London at the last train he could possibly get, and came to see me at the station at about 2:30, 3:00 in the morning. But and then he
And
phoned me on the
was he
5th.
helpful? Was he help? Could he
Wonderful.
kind of fill in some of the gaps as to what was going on, Bernie? Why you'd been arrested, and what the best? I mean,
Yeah, he
obviously
was
he would give
brilliant.
you one-to-one advice on what the best
Yeah, he
things.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic, and he'd spent the entire train journey researching what kinds of things I would normally post, um, doing checking on me, and he, we sat down in this tiny little room, and he just said, "I know exactly what you did," and he got it.
And, and
I mean, like if you're looking,
Bernie,
if you're
Bernie,
looking,
just to clarify, so to summarize this story, very, very succinctly, all of this has happened in response to you posting something that you were not the creator of, you were not the originator for this information. You posted something that you believed to be true, or that you certainly did not believe to be false. And within what, 2 or 3 hours of thinking, oh, actually, I'm not sure that is correct, you deleted it.
yeah.
And
I'd
that was
put,
it.
if this is true, there will be hell to pay, right? Because obviously, if it's happened again, there will be hell to pay for the government, right? It's all, nobody is feeling safe. If you can't go to a park or a dance class and the government can't even keep you safe there will be hell to pay. And I deleted it because then I saw it and I thought I didn't actually research that myself. I copied and pasted and I deleted it.
And as you said, you'd caveated it in any case
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
accepted that
But
you
they
weren't
didn't
completely
care.
sure it's true. So you'd put a clear caveat.
And that's the
Yeah,
key point, isn't it, Ben? It was all caveat. Your
Mm.
original post was, it started with if. In other words, this may not be true, but.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But they didn't care, you see, because there were two charges. The first is incitement to racial violence, and the second is making something up in order to incite violence. Um, and it was quite clear that I had done neither of those things. It was quite clear that that isn't what the post meant or said. Um, but they were desperate for a scalp. And I think, and the terrifying thing is, that I firmly believe that the huge swell of activists and trolls who tried desperately hard to shut me up thought they had won. And they were messaging the Met Police over and over and over again. You know that when the police came to arrest me, they called me Bonnie. The charge sheet said Stockport riots. So, misinformation is an easy thing to happen. It's just a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more strongly.
Yeah. But I mean,
And
Bernie,
my life,
it draws out what you set out here draws out several strands. It draws out the fear and anxiety and sort of imminence of what you went through. As you say, everything you know, your north, your south, your east, and your west have just gone out the window in a very short period of time, and you've got no points of reference and nothing. So that's kind of one whole area that I think you've walked us through very, very, very effectively and very well, and obviously firsthand. But also, I guess it draws out this whole idea of we're using social media every day, all of us. What is social media? You make a very good point. But we're using social media every day. And I think something that really came out of August was just how we are already, there is a lot of law out there about how we use it. And actually, it took a lot of people by surprise back in August that they were getting into trouble for certain things that were being said that they never imagined could. There were laws out there to stop them. What's your view on that and the current sort of? First of all, did this was this a complete surprise that this law suddenly came at you, and then more broadly, the state of the laws around this at the moment in the UK?
um, no, not really, because I would never have posted anything like that. In the inference that they were implying, I would never have done that.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
people should take personal responsibility for the things they say. I do believe that. Um, if it has resulted in nothing, it's an opinion, you've lost your temper and you've said something, and that is deleted, then unless you can prove, or unless the person you aimed it at can prove actual harm to themselves, then it's a moot law, isn't it? It's a pointless law. But there are a lot of people who are severely damaged by things that are said about them. And we have laws for that. We have defamation laws for that, right? So people should be aware of the laws that are in place
And
that have
national
been brought
security,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with those laws. What I find very difficult is the twisting of those laws to fit what somebody has said. I think that is very worrying for people because, like me, they can have meant something completely different. It's been twisted, and the police have been pressurized to act, which is what happened in my case. And then if you look at the press, and I think I said this in my video, there are no clicks for good news. So the press were quite happy to go ahead with this alarming story of this ordinary, normal businesswoman who did this terrible thing. Even they knew that that post had not broken the law. Even they must have known that. And they must have known it didn't start riots. How ridiculous. But they printed it
The
anyway.
chilling effect of this could not be, it couldn't be more palpable, because this is not just inhibiting people from spreading malicious disinformation. It's inhibiting people who want to speculate about current affairs, who are clear that what they're doing is speculation, that they're not trying to incite violence, they're not trying to spread mis or disinformation. All they want to do, all you want to do, was talk about what was happening, and what the consequences of it might be if this claim were true. You made that very explicit. And from the experience you just described, I think for those of us who've had no contact with the police in our lives whatsoever, I get completely, I agree entirely that process of going into a police station, being shut in a police cell, must be a terrifying ordeal that's completely bewildering. As you said, you've got no sense of time, or what's going to happen to you. And I think for people listening to your experience and reading about what's happened, reading about other cases where people have been prosecuted for speculating, commentating, talking about these riots and what happened over the summer, uh, the chilling effect is absolutely crushing, because I think people are just going to look at this and think, well, I'm not happy with the state of the country. That all of these shocking murders keep happening, these acid attacks, all of these appalling crimes. This never used to happen, and I think people are going to feel terribly afraid to talk about any of these issues, because it is so unclear, firstly, what new legislation like the Online Safety Act will mean in practice, but
Yeah.
also, as you've just pointed out, how it will be distorted and how it will be used by the police or misunderstood by the police.
Well, that Online Safety Act is very new. So not many things have gone through the court yet under that. In fact, mine would have been one of the first. It would have been a great test case. But it's not only speculation, it's also opinion. And what people have to understand now is, let's say you have an opinion about, I don't know, what's going on, acid attacks, for example. You put your opinion online and a group of organized people don't agree with you and they start bombarding the police, then what you have to understand is that you no longer have a private life. Because once they take your devices, they want to know what groups you're in, what WhatsApp groups you're in, what you post privately on Messenger, for example, to friends. You have no private life. And if they find that, okay, the post you made online perhaps didn't quite meet the threshold for prosecution, but they believe they can show your character to be such that this is something you meant in the way they want it to mean, then you're stuffed. Yeah, now I know that many people were charged and prosecuted, and people have said, well, what they've said didn't seem that bad. Well, maybe it wasn't, But what did they say privately? Because you have no private life once they have your devices. And that is terrifying. It is terrifying.
One of the things I discovered with WhatsApp, Bernie, is something called disappearing messages that I think quite a few people that I speak to have now switched on. And it's not because
Yep.
it's not because they're worried about what they say, because they're just normal people, normal citizens getting on with their lives. But it's exactly what you say. It's about, okay, well, what if it goes into the wrong hands and I lose all my privacy? It's that classic, absolutely specious or spurious claim that's being made at the moment, actually, which is if you've got nothing to hide, you don't need to worry. Well, we all have not something to hide, but we all want our privacy, actually. There are very private things that we say to people, and we don't want those things to be made public
No.
or hung out to dry.
Yeah, completely agree. And the other thing behind that is people say if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. Well, doesn't it just depend what the decision of the government is that day? Yeah,
Yeah.
because if they can change things so quickly, and no one really understands that online harms bill and what it will do, then nobody is safe from voicing their own opinions privately. You aren't safe.
Yeah.
Now, it
Yeah.
just
It's
so
very
happens,
interesting.
luckily, that I'm so boring. All the police found on my devices were pictures of my massive dog and my bonsai trees, right? Because I'm really boring. But
With Ben, it would be the
I
Roman
can
Empire.
imagine. But I can imagine, that there are people in very high-profile jobs who might be having discussions with their families or friends that they definitely do not want out in the public domain, or to be, or the police to have. It's awful.
Well, the law increasingly is dragging private family life into the public realm, and in Scotland, with the new hate crime act that came into effect earlier this year, the
Yeah.
dwelling defence was removed, and that has created incredibly perverse situations where you have the prospect of children reporting their parents for things they have said in dinner table conversations, if anyone still has dinner table conversations.
Or dinner
Yeah.
tables.
And
It, it
um,
reminds me.
and I think
It reminds me of when I grew up in South Africa, and one of the big conversation pieces, and I don't know how true that law is, but one of the big conversation pieces at the time was that in a classroom, you couldn't hold a discussion about politics if there were more than 7 people there. Otherwise, it would be considered a political meeting.
Bernie, what message would you have for our members who are listening, who haven't gone through what you've gone through? They have the same concerns. They may well be self-censoring. I think a lot of us are self-censoring, or at least erring on the side of caution. I mean, we've mentioned things like disappearing messages and that kind of thing, and where is the line between politics and not politics? But what message would you give to people who are really concerned about free speech, really concerned about free expression in the UK, about the direction of travel, and also personally concerned about what they can or cannot say? Having gone through the fire, Bernie, what message would you give?
I think there are several, really. The first is you have to decide how much you have to lose, right? Because with free speech now, it isn't free, it's costed speech. So if you're employed and you want to exercise your right to free speech, you need to check your employment online policy. Where you can, I would suggest you do it anonymously. I honestly mean that. And that's from somebody who isn't anonymous. And, lots of times in my life online, I haven't been anonymous, but I've always been careful of what I'd said, except that one occasion. And that's what I'm telling people, really. You never know what it is you're going to say that you might have meant no harm by, but which gets you into trouble. And unfortunately, in these times, you have to decide how much your free speech you are prepared to pay for it. because everyone will. Now, and anyone who isn't signed up to the Free Speech Union should be, because the support, and I will say this to you, the support that my family were given without me even knowing was unbelievable. Now, I know it was a very big case, and I know there was lots of press around it, but the staff, you guys, Toby, have been amazing to my family. And when I got out, again, amazing to me. You could not have done more, from providing barristers for me to chat to, psychotherapists for me to chat to when I couldn't even leave my house. That's what happens to people. So that's what I would do, is figure out how much you're prepared to spend for your free speech. And if you can't afford it, then you're going to have to be a little bit more anonymous.
What really strikes me there, Bernie, we've inherited a lot of freedoms in this country. And we're extraordinarily lucky to have inherited those freedoms. And we do talk, obviously, about the cost at which those freedoms have come. We think of the beaches of Normandy, we think of World War II. But it is not only the beaches of Normandy, it is hundreds of years of people who've been willing to pay that cost, often paying the ultimate price to give us those freedoms. And therefore, we are rather unusual, aren't we, to have lived as we have, we're not dissimilar ages, to have lived this wonderful period from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where we've enjoyed our inheritance and haven't had to think about the cost of enjoying the freedom that we've inherited. And I think the point you make there is we're going back to normal, really. Freedom comes at a cost, and you have to count the cost before and ahead of time.
You have to.
If you're not wanting to put words in your mouth, Bernie.
No, that is exactly what I mean. And it's got nothing to do with bravery. It's got to do with what you're prepared to afford. Because if you lose your job, if you lose your reputation, if you are personally attacked, how much are you prepared to pay? And I think there are people out there now, a growing band of people, who are prepared to lose it because so much has already been lost. And I think those people will be much braver in future because everything's gone. You know, look at Posey Parker, look at Katie Hopkins. Whether you agree with these people or not, they have freed themselves because they paid everything. They lost everything. And now they are free to say what they want. And I guess most people just aren't. And you're right, they will have to fight, and they will have to make a decision. What I'm saying is, be careful of your decision, because you never know what you're going to write that will come back and hurt you a lot.
That's a really, really good piece of advice, Bernie. A really practical piece of advice as well. Because it's not saying that free speech doesn't matter. It's not saying that we shouldn't exercise our free speech. It's just say, be realistic, be careful, be thoughtful. And I think all of us,
or not,
in the heat of the
or not, or don't be careful. Say whatever you like, but understand the consequences in this climate of doing that. And I'm not saying that's right. I think it's dreadful. But it is the world you're living in at the moment. It just is. Now, I hear a lot of people saying they're free speech absolutists. They're not. They self-censor all the time. And I think I'm more of a free information absolutist, right? Because what's happening at the moment is speech is being classified as acceptable or not acceptable based on the information that is being given to us by authorized sources, right? So, for instance, you can't question the climate change narrative, really. Right, if you question it, you get attacked from all sources. You used to get thrown off social media, and so you have lost the freedom to criticize the information that's coming out. And the reason that they're able to do that is that they won't publish, or the publication of other analysis, perhaps contrary analysis, is pushed right to the bottom of search engine links. So all that's happening is, in the restriction of all information, some speech then becomes unacceptable. Does that make any sense? If all the information was there, everyone could have a good old argument about it, couldn't they? But by restricting any argument to a narrative the government has taken, then it makes any speech about that unacceptable. That's what I think is happening. It might be a random thing.
It's this whole new concept of misinformation and disinformation that we are very familiar with, and how that gets weaponized. Again, something we're very familiar with, Bernie. I mean, you've touched there on so many issues that we talk about every week, actually, in this podcast. It's been so busy at the Free Speech Union, we haven't managed to get a podcast episode every week, have we, Ben? Unfortunately.
No,
but you've really
we can only
brought to light all of these same issues that we do talk about and that we do wrestle with. And social media, misinformation, and the law are absolutely at the heart of that. So thank you, Bernie.
I think so. And the new one,
clearly.
And the new one, of course, now, which is beginning to, well, a couple of years ago, it started raising its head, is the new term malinformation, particularly important to Ireland at the moment, because malinformation is the dissemination of true information, but which the government considers harmful to either itself or to someone else. So you could say something perfectly true, but if the government decides it's harmful, then that's considered malinformation and you're breaking the law. And that is just horrific, because it will stop people like whistleblowers being able to whistleblow publicly, because it's harmful. Harmful to the government.
The legal but
criticizing
harmful,
the government.
The legal but harmful battle
legal.
is one that we're tooling up for at the Free Speech Union. Very aware that we expended a lot of effort getting it struck out of the Online Safety Act last year and the year before. We campaigned hard and that was a success, really, or at least making sure that any ramifications of a similar clause were minimized. But it's going to. This government, I think, is going to look at that again.
I agree. They will bring it back again. They will. And Germany now, of course, Germany is trying to bring that in again. I think it failed. I think it failed a couple of years ago, but it's now back on the table. And it's that creeping erosion of freedom through these censorship laws, because that's what they are, in order to protect us all from information the government doesn't want you to have access to, that we will end up in this very narrow space of what you can say and you can't. Exactly like happened in China under Mao, exactly the same way. We're going to change what words mean. We're going to change what's acceptable. And we're being squeezed from being able to speak out here. We're being squeezed. So this is the only stuff you're allowed to talk about. And I just find that incredibly frightening. And it must end. And I just don't know how many people will get hurt in that, like you called it, in that war.
It's a bumpy road ahead, Bernie. I was just talking before we switched on the cameras and the microphone. We were talking, the three of us, about how the Free Speech Union has just grown exponentially in the last quarter in Q3, and also casework, which Ben looks at. We saw twice the number, wasn't it, Ben, of the cases in Q3 that we saw in Q2. So thank you for calling out and encouraging people to join up. I think all of our listeners and all of our viewers, I think, would echo that and do their part as well to encourage us to join up. But Ben, do you have anything you wanted to add at this point? Or
well, I think the final thought from me would just be in response to what you've just said, Tom, and what you've said, Bernie. I mean, the only reason we're in a position to be able to provide legal help for people like yourself in those kinds of emergency situations is because we have thousands and thousands of members who've flocked to our standard who pay a membership sub that means that we're able to provide legal advice for people. And on so many occasions in the past 4.5 years, we've provided legal help to people who just do not have the means to find a solicitor for themselves, who just don't know how to go about navigating a situation like the one you've dealt with, or a situation where their employer is investigating them. And these experiences, I think most people who contact us would say, are the most stressful, or one of the most stressful experiences of their entire lives,
Yeah, agreed.
aside from, say, a family bereavement or something like that. But it would be one of the three worst experiences in your life, very often going through a situation where you're being cancelled in some way, or you're going to lose your livelihood, or you're terrified at the thought of being sent to trial for something that's completely unclear and untested, and it's not explained at all what the issue is. And so, as you said, it's only possible, Tom, because so many people have supported us, and that means we can then help people like you, Bernie. And I'm delighted that we were able to, and that your case was dropped, and that
Not
common
by us,
sense
but
and a
by
very
the
limited
police, by the
legislative
way.
way prevailed. By the police, yes, by the police. Yeah, good correction, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
absolute
having
pleasure,
me.
Bernie.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry you've gone through what you've gone through, Bernie. But what a message you have for people! What a message! What a powerful message you can send out. And I hope that I know it will be. This episode will be hugely appreciated by our listeners. So thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you, Bernie.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Goodbye.